Is it? I guess it is on. And it's up there. Yeah, oh. Is there a volume? Down a little? Okay. Yeah, we always, I had always a problem when people would ask us, where are you going next? And last year, you know, was South Georgia. And I would get comments, oh, it ought to be really nice this time of the year. Anywhere near Atlanta? I go, we need a little bit further south. South Georgia, there we go. This little dot. It's about 1,300 miles east of the end of South America. The closest piece of land is probably the Antarctic Peninsula or the Falklands. There are no landing strips on South Georgia, so the only way is by boat. And as Louise mentioned, a lot of the larger ships are now forbidden to go in this area because of ice damage and they're not structurally sound for it. So you're basically relegated to a boat that does about 10 miles an hour. So it's about, from South America to South Georgia, it's about 4 days, 4 to 5 days, if the weather cooperates. This picture I downloaded, I think, last summer, before our trip was last November, or October. And that's South Georgia, and that's an iceberg, and that's another iceberg. I was looking at this one trying to find more pictures because I figured, oh, if they get drift, it's actually, this iceberg did cut off for a day or two entrance into Cumberland Bay. So in a larger size, the red dots, if you can see, this area here we're talking about briefly, this is the crossing Shackleton did. But the red dots all along are the areas where we made landings. Now there are no accommodations out South Georgia, so you live on the ship. There are no gift, well, there is a gift shop. There's one gift shop now. So a little history. 1775, James Cook claimed it for Britain and named it for King George III out of Georgia. He noticed a lot of whales and more so seals lining the beaches. In fact, to the point that they couldn't get ashore because of the number of both elephant seals and fur seals. And in the late 1700s, the sealing in the North Atlantic was declining. So the sealers started arriving in the late 1700s and they continued to the 1900s, almost decimating the population of the seals. In 1904, the first whaling station was opened. Again, this was whaling was, whales were pretty much harpooned out in the North Atlantic, and Norwegians moved down to South Georgia. It was said that for the first 2 years, they never left the little area that I showed that was blocked with the iceberg there was Cumberland Bay. They never left Cumberland Bay. There were that many whales that they could take. Whaling continued until the 60s, although it really declined in probably the 30s. The Japanese then took over the whaling stations and continued until about 1964, where it was made illegal. The whales are on an increase, although not as quickly as if we would hope it would be. They say both the elephant seals and the fur seals have now overtaken mistaken where they were when whaling or when sealing was first started. So they have recovered. 1914, South Georgia was also pretty much known for, this was the area that the explorers heading to the South Pole, Amundsen, Scott, Shackleton, would leave from. One, there was a whaling station. They had supplies, they had coal, they could recoal their ships and get in there. So in 1914, Shackleton set off from South Georgia aboard the Endurance. In 1916, he returned aboard the James Caird, arriving in King Haakon Bay, and there he crossed the island of Stromness, 26 miles, 36 hours. 2011. This is ratification program started. When the Norwegians or the whalers arrived, of course, with ships, rats infested the island. There's not much land other than glaciers and shoreline, but the few shorebirds and migrating birds that are there, the rats basically eat the eggs. So they've started a program, I'll talk about that later. And 2012, last year, they started eradication of the reindeer. Again, the Norwegians brought 12 reindeer with them in 1904. This was basically for milk and meat. There are now somewhere upwards of 4,000 reindeer on the island. So the intent is to eradicate the rats as well as the reindeer. And the program is part 2. Part 1 was successful for the rats. Part 2, we'll know probably next year how successful it was. They completed it this last April, I think, just before winter set in down there. And South Georgia's been referred to as the Galapagos of the South Atlantic. And you can see 30 million birds between penguins and the albatross, the petrels and the prions. Down at the bottom, the South Georgia shag and the bottom one, the South Georgia pipit, are the two birds that have suffered the worst from the rats. The pipits can only reproduce on islands where there are. This is kind of lounge. I thought I'd show you what it looks at a 300. Again, the ship is almost. It's 300 feet long. I mean, it does 10 to 12 knots in calm waters. This is what the lounge area looks like, all windowed all the way around. And, this is where presentations are made and announcements are made. And as always on a ship, the first thing you have is a safety rating where you got to put on your life jacket, come up to the lounge. The bridge is open, so you're welcome there anytime, except possibly when they're going into a harbor. They may close it. Montevideo, this is what it looked as we left that day. A little breezy. This was a harbor boat that accompanied us out of the harbor, because this is the Rio de Plata, for probably 10 or 12 miles out before you get out. So they have to have a harbor pilot taking us out. And dinner that night wasn't necessarily calm. But we did have a nice sunset. And what do you do for 6 days? Well, on these ships, there's usually a guide staff that includes historian, geologist, biologist, etc. And you stand out on deck and see if you can find any bird life or whales, what have you. white-chinned petrel. And eventually, when we left the first day, there was very little bird life because it's deep ocean where there's not much. And as we got further down after the second or third day, when it starts running into the shallows where there are upheavals, the ship picks up a lot of the nutrients in the water, and then all of a sudden you get tons of birds following the ship. This is one of the white-chinned petrels. Black-browed albatross, whose probably wingspan is somewhere around 8 to 9 feet. Cape petrel, this is one of the smaller pincata, or a Cape petrel. And you can basically see the size difference between the two birds. Southern giant petrel. Again, this is a slightly smaller bird than the albatross. Antarctic Prion, the most difficult bird to get a picture of. He's gray, he flies about 6 inches off the water, and he loves to fly in the wave troughs. I think I probably took 200 pictures of them and only got water. Say whale that came along, a pot of pilot whales. And one thing we had was, that was this Argo project. They asked us, the ship, to drop off this. Basically, it measures the temperature and salinity. Drop it in the water, it drops down to 2,000 meters, floats for 10 days down there, take recording data. And after 10 days, it pops back up to the surface and sends out the data. And they're dropping these all throughout the world. So we ended up with a little hard work on it. Very crude way, tied a line to it and dropped it overboard. Part of this group was the Shackleton crossing. A group of 10 people we were going to drop them off in King Haakon Bay on the southwest side of the island. And they were going to follow the steps of Shackleton going across with modern equipment. And I just want to point out, this person here is Rick Stevens. He runs Polar Explorers. You want to do a cross-country trip to the North Pole on skis, or do the last 2 degrees to the South Pole, he's the one that you want to go with. Paul Shirky is from Eleyville, Minnesota. He's a dog sledder. He was the first one to dog sled to the North Pole unassisted. This person, Vern Tejas. I don't know if anyone here are mountaineers who have heard of him. I read his bio. They posted these bios on the wall. And I read his bio about 3 times ago. You've got to get him. He's from Kokina, Alaska. He summited Denali 76 times. He has summited Everest 7 times. He's done, and he did the 7 summits, both summer and winter. And his wife was with him. They were married on Mount Vincent in Antarctica. At the top of Mount Vincent. So the crew that went with him, they were in very good hands as far as crossing. One thing I should know, there are no trails. There's no paths. It's all glaciers and ice for the crossing. They were basically had a map. They pulled out some GPS readings they thought they were, and they used those. Here when things got boring up on deck, they could go up and watch them. They were practicing here. They were making some loops in case they fell into a crevasse and had to get out. Demonstrations, and you can always go up on the bridge and check the GPS and see where we are. Here's the ship here, and here's South Georgia here. I'm not quite sure how many days that was, but up here we were doing about 11 knots, which wasn't bad. infamous journey of the Endurance, where they left South Georgia and sailed down. The intent was, the pole had already been reached. This was in 1914. What they hadn't done is crossed the island, or crossed Antarctica completely, so he had set up an expedition to cross the island. There was another ship that was leaving from New Zealand at the time and going to come in from the other side of the island, leaving depots. And the Endurance was set in the ice in January of 1915. It was a very bad year for ice. They drifted till October on in the ship on the ice, where they abandoned the ship because they recognized that it probably wasn't going to remain floating for very much longer, about a month. So they camped on the ice close to the ship. The Endurance sank in November, and they basically pitched tents and lived on the ice till April, where as they were drifting north, the ice was getting softer, leads were opening up. They launched the boats and sailed and rowed to Elephant Island. It was the only spot, the closest spot they could get to with the winds that were going. Originally, they had hoped to get into this island, this area on the peninsula. And the one problem with Elephant Island is the whalers don't go there. They go to the peninsula, but they don't go there. So he knew from experience and from talking to the whalers that he was not going to get rescued there. This is Elephant Island. This area here is basically right in there. It's where they spent 3 months waiting for him to return. This is the spit of land where they ended up setting up camp. This is a memorial actually to the captain of the Chilean ship that rescued them. But you can see a good storm with 8 to 10 foot waves will wash over this, and that was one of the problems they had. Is water would, a storm would come up, would wash over, take their food supplies, ground their tents. This is a picture that I pulled off the web of them leaving. That was able to be saved. They had actually raised the sides of the boat by about 15 inches and covered it with sailcloth. This year in February, there was a group that recreated or redid the sailing from Elephant Island to South Georgia. That's the conditions of the sailing. That's what it looked like inside. 6 people kind of stuffed in a 24-foot boat. And this is them landing in King Haakon Bay. So, and then 3 of them did do the crossing. And that was in February, March of this year. And again, I come back to this print. Here's King Haakon Bay. This is actually the trail that they followed. So now we finally get to South Georgia. This was 5:30 in the morning, I think. As we were sailing in. This was probably your typical weather for South Georgia. If you're expecting sunbathing and warm weather, cloudless skies, it doesn't happen very often. It's just a picture of the sledges that the group was using to haul their equipment. This is Pagadi Bluff, where Shackleton landed, where we landed, and where they left to cross. And basically, you can see right down here, there's a little few sticks sitting up. That's the group heading across. And they're going to head up this snowfield and then around. And there's this zoomed in close-up of the crossing. That's the last we saw. Now, as I brought up, there is no airport, there is no rescue, there are no helicopters. When they left, they were on their own. The only thing, our only responsibility was if they had to turn back, then the ship would have had to turn back from its normal route and come back into the bay and pick them up. But there was going to be no rescue. There was no one down there to rescue them. So again, this is basically the path across the island. As Shackleton went across, he thought he was in a different location. He came down into what they call Possession Bay, realized he was wrong, and came back up. This is the area, if you read about Shackleton, called the Tridents. There's 3 peaks, and each one of these, they tried to get down. They finally found a path down. And of course, Shackleton, they saw no way down, so they just sat down and slid, hoping for the best. This group, again, Vern Chaos being an experience, they're digging a wheel out here. They found a 5-foot diameter wheel, 3 feet. They got it out, and they rolled it down the slope where they thought their best chances of getting it down were. Again, they didn't know where they were in regards to where Shackleton went down. And their theory was, okay, if there's going to be a crevasse, it's going to go into it. If there's going to be an avalanche, it will generate it above us. And if it goes all the way, we've got a nice path to follow. So it made all the way down, and they followed it. And this is typically what you get dressed for the weather. The weather in South Georgia, October, November is probably 30 degrees, 35 degrees. If the sun comes out, you get up to 40. Windy, you can expect any winds, up to 30, 35 miles an hour. Are not uncommon. Yeah, that was me. And again, this is the ramp, and you come down to a little platform, and they help you into the Zodiacs. And finally, we get on shore. And of course, the king penguin is Sally's favorite. And these guys were just standing there, nice pose. And this is the beach master. He would defend his beach for his harem. His mother and probably the pup is a week old. After a week, they start turning brown, losing the color. That's what we call a wiener. He's probably about 3 to 4 weeks old. And they can get up to 400 pounds. And like I say, if you get too close, they know he was not happy. Fur seals. We were there this time, October. The fur seals were just coming on shore. The last time we were there, which was later, about a month later, they were well on shore. And there was a couple times where you ran because they defended their territory. The elephant seals would defend it, but they weren't bothered by humans walking around. On the other hand, the fur seals were. And he was showing his emotions there. Antarctic tern. And here's the South Georgia blue-eyed shag. Blue doesn't show up quite so well in that photo. And we did a Zodiac trip. We're typically on shore. When we do land, you're on shore for 3 to 4 hours. You can go back to the ship earlier. There's always a Zodiac there. But 3 to 4 hours is your normal stay. Here we decided to do a Zodiac trip around the south end of the bay. The glacier and snowfields. Gentoo penguin. That was our first Gentoo that we saw. Another shot of the blue-eyed shag. And sheathbill, kind of a garbage eater. No polar bears. Giant petrel taken off the water. And this was an unexpected stop that we did. When Shackleton arrived in King Haakon Bay, the first stop they went to was at Camp Cove. This was right at the entrance to the bay, and a protected cove in here, and we got permission to make the stop, and none of the staff on board had been there. So this was the first time for everyone. And basically, this is where they came ashore. Not much shoreline. Actually, they couldn't even get the boat up on the shoreline. So they had to kind of stand, someone had to stand in water and hold it. This is a little cave they found where they spent 4 days recovering from the sailing trip. And it was reasonably comfortable. I assume those rocks were probably left by them, because I doubt if there's been more than 6 or 7 stops over that time, over the 100 years that people have stopped here. Normally, ships don't go to the west or southwest coast because it's just too rough. The chances of landing are slim, and this is probably the only place plaque that was left by. So from that was our first day. We spent Magadi Bluff is down at the south end. Cape Rosen, Camp Cove is up here. From here, the ship was going around to make a stop along the way at Elsehul and Whale Bay. Eventually get down and pick up the one's crossing. The ship usually repositioned in the evening while dinner was going on, or while we were eating lunch. So you weren't missing much while you were eating. Gives you an idea of the landscape, the ship to them. Some black-browed albatross and some gray-headed albatross. My favorite, I think, is the light-paneled city albatross. They're just beautiful for light gray, and their eyes, just the white of their eyes, just are really. But you have to put up with some people with cameras. And our Zodiacs. That's what a king penguin's footprint looks like next to my booth. These are called tripods, and they were used by the sealers to boil down the blubber of the seals into oil. The oil, whale oil and seal oil, was used for lamps, mostly, I think. The South Georgia pintail. And again, these are threatened because of the rats. And from Elsehul, we went into Whale Bay. And this doesn't show it out too much, but and here we had the captain of the ship drove the Zodiac. Usually the guides drive the Zodiac, but for some reason he decided and we deemed him the best Zodiac driver. He could take a Zodiac through the wave and not get you wet. And those are penguins. All these dots that you see here and up here and up here are penguins. And the rocks along the shore, they're the elephant seals. Whale spine, and a footprint given a size. And the king penguin, beautiful color. And a chip being fed. And I always like this, a lineup of all the photographers standing there looking out into the rookery. And the rule was that you had to stay, well, they said 15 feet away from the birds or the animals. And, which you could do, but they didn't have a rule. So if you just sat down 15 feet, yeah, they would approach. And if you laid down, this was actually our expedition leader. She laid down. There was a pair of giant petrels there. One of them decided she looked like dinner. Baby fur seal. And he was the beach master. And this was a sequence of, I don't usually take video with my camera. It's just too difficult to get it into the video mode, so I took it. This was a fellow that was on the beach, and this male decided he wanted to challenge him. And that's why you don't pretty much get between them, because you're probably looking at 4 tons there. Prion Island is rat-free, but it is one of the breeding places for the wandering albatross. This was in November 2005. I kind of put this in because in 2005 we picked up 3 Tasmanians and dropped them off in South Georgia, and they were going to build a walkway to prevent erosion in this area. So we returned to the same site last fall, and yep, it's done. Gorgeous. I don't know if you noticed, but here's a sailing ship, the Iceberg. And I had a picture from 2005. They were sailing, the same boat was sailing into this field. Here's a young albatross. He's still fledging, putting his wings up to gain strength in the wind. And I'm not sure if he's a full adult or he's probably about 2 years old, ready to take off and spend 2 years. Gentoos. They build their nests out of rocks. And they are raiders. This guy decided he was going to move through, and he knocked the penguins off their nest. And that's the egg. And that's the sheath-bill. On the big side, luckily they don't care. And this is the South Georgia pivot. We were lucky enough to see one of them. Little, very small bird, probably maybe 4 inches long. And there's a probably better shot of the shag. Salisbury Plain is probably the 2nd largest penguin town. I think there's probably 100,000 birds. Penguin, king penguin. They're long. And again, you can look up here, all these brown dots, etc. By the way, after the Falkland War, they wanted to build a landing strip here. Luckily, it's still planes. Check. And the feet of the chick looks like. And he was hungry. He was after his mother. So from Salisbury Plain, again, we continued down into Fortuna Bay, right here, and this is where the group should be coming down to meet us, and then they were going to do, then hopefully we were planning on doing final 7 kilometers over to Stromness, which is where Shackleton ended up. We gave up that thought real quick. This was what the weather looked like as we entered Fortuna Bay. It did clear off down low. Looking out over the, again, another thing, King Haakon County, up toward the glacier leading up toward where they would be coming down. Clouds coming in into the bay, and as much as I could tell, the trail up over it somewhere up in here. Penguins are like I used to be when I backpacked or back trying to cross the stream. You just look at that rock and go, I don't know, but I'll try. Nope. Again, the light mammal study albatross. And reindeer. This was from 2005, and this was the beginning of the hike in considerably different conditions. Going from Stromness, or from Fortuna Bay over to Stromness. And of course, as you get up there, the weather changes. And wind. By the way, looking down, this is the slope we had to go down. And that's basically where the previous picture was taken. I don't know if they show up, but you can see what looks like sliding marks. That's exactly what they were. The easiest way down is sit down and slide. And there's the whaling station, Stromness whaling station. This year, hiking in, since we couldn't hike across, the ship was coming across. You can see the crossing party, Shackleton crossing parties, just coming down off the hill. There's the waterfall the Shackleton kind of slid down or climbed down over. And this was, again, from our previous trip. You see the turn. This is a nesting area for the terns. They failed to tell us that. And everyone, well, it's easier to walk out on the gravel, which was a riverbed, except the terns would just come down and swoop down and attack it. It wasn't until we got all the way off the bed that one of the guides said, they're doing that because you're walking through the nesting area. It would be better if you told us that before. But this is what it looked like in going out 8 years ago. Basically what it was when we were hiking back out from the waterfall. The weather changes very rapidly. Whaling station's off. This is all cordoned off now because the buildings are falling down. There's asbestos. There's no money to do anything to tear them down. So In the end, it was used as a repair station, which is why you see all the different props. Yeah, that's one of the whale watching crow's nests. Well, back in 2005, they didn't have it shut off. So we kind of, without knowing, just walked through it and walked through some of the buildings. And that's a picture of the manager's house station. And I understand they're raising funds to repair that, and rebuild it, and maybe open it to the tourists. Panorama of the whaling station. And from Stromness is up in here. We came all the way down to the south end to Drygalski Fjord. First you get up, there's radar. You're not sure what all those dots are. Icebergs. Various icebergs. And here we're entering Drygalski Fjord. This is the oldest, they figure the oldest rock of South Georgia. They figure it's the part that really broke off from South America back with the drift. We were very fortunate to have a very nice day to go in. And off to one side is what they refer to as Larsen Harbor. Here we did a Zodiac cruise in hopes of finding wood Elsehul. This is the only place in South Georgia that you can find them. Very interesting. It's the end of a glacier with a water, frozen water spout. And on our way back to some harvesting gentus. Or just the landscape. Cooper Bay we stopped at this year. They made an attempt. I got to really give the staff of the ship a lot of credit because every stop they attempted to get us off. This was one they had to abandon because the waves, the swells were 8-foot swells, and you just couldn't get safely under the Zodiac. But in 2005 we stopped there. And this is one of the locations for the macaroni penguins. And this is tussock grass, by the way, if you refer to it. It's just mounds with grass tufts on top of it. And if you walk off it, it can be 3 feet down to where ground is. It builds itself up into these mounds, just looking down into the beach. And here you can see all the fur seals that were standing around, basically trying to keep them off. Sunset. Gold Harbor. The last time we stopped there in 2005, I'll never forget it. It was 5:30 in the morning, the wind was blowing 30 miles an hour, and the rain was going sideways. Gore-Tex didn't stop. But this time we were really fortunate, because it is just a gorgeous spot. And this is a skua, another garbage bird, I guess you would say. Gives you an idea of the gentoo and a king. Very cooperative, walking by each other. like I say, if you kneel down, you had to stay so far away. This was our ship's doctor. He's probably a good 400 pounds. I love the reflect. I don't know if you can see the reflection in his eyes. We did a hike up to the top of one of the bluffs. A number of us did. It's just gorgeous. That's looking down on the colony, Penguin Colony. Brown, of course, the brown spots are all the chicks. You can see the line of elephant seals all the way down the beach. There's a pair of the light-managed cities nesting. St. Andrews Bay is the largest king penguin colony in the world. It's on 250,000 penguins. Again, because of the seas, this is open to the ocean. It's not protected. We were not able to land there this year. But in 2005 we were. And this is a panorama I stitched together from 3 pictures we took that were not in sequence. I'm amazed at what the panorama software can do. I just picked 3 of them out that we had taken that day, and I'm going, wow, these are close enough. I wonder if I can make a panorama out of it. It was just fun. Like I say, Sally sat down on the beach taking pictures of the penguins coming in. This one came up and started pecking at the bottom of her boot. And these guys decided to life jacket. When you land, you usually can drop off your life jackets, and they have these bags, you just throw them in. The elephants of wieners, as we call them, decided that was a nice place to lay down. And the other thing was, that's me, standing there, and this fella decided I looked like must have been something to play with, because I'm standing there waiting for the Zodiac to come in, and all of a sudden I feel something against my back pushing me out to the water. I was up almost to my boots before one of our guides finally walked up and slapped the elephant seal. I had no clue what was just being pushed. And he, whoa! Ocean Harbor is another spot that they have cleaned up. It was a whaling ship. This is a ship. And I don't know if you can pick out some of these spots here. Penguins. That ship broke free during a storm and ran up on ground. Of course, it sits there. Some of the machinery left from the whaling station. This one had an old train track and engine that pulled out the vats of oil out to the water. Picked up. This was unusual because most seals just have one pup, and we weren't sure if this was twins or it was an adopted one. But 2 of them were actually feeding. And one of the guides was spent 2 years on South Georgia at the British Antarctic Station, and mentioned that we could take the hike if the weather was good. That he swore was going to be one of the best hikes we had. So we're entering this is called Grytviken Bay. And the ship dropped us off. Snowshoes. We started hiking. Across the Gentry County. Here, track down along the lake, over this shed, back over down. We started off over there. down. It's coming down in Grytviken. This was where Larsen set up the first whaling station. They've spent a lot of money and time cleaning this up so it is essentially as safe as it's going to be. The church was actually built in Norway, taken apart, transported in, I think, 1913. Yeah, 1913 for Christmas. And that's been rebuilt. There's been a lot of restoration work on that inside of the church. And this is the gift shop, well, the museum, and the gift shop. And that's basically the equipment that polar explorers use. Sledges in the back, the tents, the Primus stoves, which darn look like what we used. And this is a replica of the James Card. 23 feet 4 inches long with almost 6 foot 9 inch beam. 6 people sailed that for 800 miles. It's just mind-boggling that they made it. And this is a wandering albatross. Wandering albatross. It's in the back. He's kind of at an angle. So this is an 8 foot ceiling. That one's a small one. He's probably 9 foot or so. One of the whaling ships that they pulled off an anchor. This is the Whaler Cemetery. And Shackleton's grave. And last 2 years ago, I think it was, they found Frank Wilde was Shackleton's right-hand man. And, they found his ashes somewhere in South Africa. And 2 years ago, they brought him to South Georgia area on the left side of Shackleton. We weren't quite sure why. Being a right-hand man. This is the British Antarctic station at King Edward Point. This was from 2005. Somewhere on the wharf, I'm not sure exactly whether it's out here, there are 3 kayaks. Because we arrived the morning after the 3 that I spoke about, the 3 Kiwis that circumnavigated South Georgia. They came in the evening before we arrived. And the 3, what are the 3 kayaks doing there? They told us that they're sound asleep. It took them, I think, 3 weeks to circumnavigate. They had to have this sailing ship that had to go with them as a support ship. Grytviken as we were leaving. And this is, I mentioned, the South Georgia Habitat restoration project. So far, I think they've dropped, what they do is they drop poison pellets for the rats. And then after they do that, they go around and they put in these wax sticks where they knew the rats were with peanut butter on them. And they go back and they keep checking them to see if there's any gnaw marks on them. And so far, I think they've done this area here. I know the first year they did area 4 in this area. That was very successful. They found no mark. This past spring, they were able to complete this whole area right with their last day. They did not think they were going to be able to complete it. The problem is, if they didn't complete it, it was a waste. Because if they didn't get all the areas, then what rats were left would spread back. And so it costs basically $140 US to do a hectare, which is 2.5 acres. So they still have this area left to do, but they feel that it's successful. The reindeer are in different areas mainly down in this area. Where the colors are is basically where vegetation is. Any place else is glacier or snow. And what they've done is they've hired Sami from Finland to come down and herd the reindeer. And then they shoot the reindeer, process the meat. And what I read was they were going to sell the meat to the tourist ships coming in. So after, that was our last stop, and we're headed back. And these guys cooperated very nicely for me, because they were very close together, flying in formation. You see the size of the petrel. White-chinned petrel is leading, black-browed albatross, and then a wanderer. And a white morph, southern giant petrel. Rare, but they're seen quite often. Flying formation. That's a wanderer. Wingtip in the water. And then one morning, just after breakfast, we're all standing there and someone yells out, "Orca!" So we go out there, and one of the one of our guides that spent 2 years in South Georgia goes, "Oh, that's a type D, I can tell by the spot." And that it's a very small eye spot. And this was the 7th sighting since 2004. They're only in basically the Southern Ocean between South Georgia and South America, and then again in the Pacific, Southern Pacific, between Chile and New Zealand in that area, and that's the only areas where they are in a very small window. We actually ran into them twice. And as all trips, they come to an end. Here we're coming into Ushuaia. The Andes in the background. And we covered almost 3,000 nautical miles. 18 days, 19 days. That's it. I guess we can open up for questions. Anyone? That's what it was. Yeah, questions? The ship would hold, I think, 110, but there was only 53 maybe on board, because this was basically a transitional trip. In other words, they had spent time up in the north during our summer, and they spent some time, maybe September through October, being refit, repairs, etc. In one of the shipyards, and then they have to transition down to the Southern Ocean. So this they decided to do. On the way down, they would try to make some money and do down there. I don't think this is working. Others?
You probably mentioned in the reading what month it was in 2005, because I noticed the difference in the snow cover that was 2005.
Whoops.
What was the difference in
Hank? Go ahead. This thing's, how do I turn it on? There. It was November. No, we went, I think we went probably mid-October. We were home last year by November, the 1st of November, 2nd of November. The other trip I think we got was probably late November into early December. So yeah, there's definitely a difference in snowboarding.
How long did it take the hikers to make that reverse?
They did in 4 days. Shackleton did it in 26 hours. But he had no equipment. I'm sure they would have taken longer if they had food and tents, but they had nothing with them, so they had no choice of stopping, basically.
Do you have a compass?
Who?
No direction they were going?
Shackleton?
Yeah.
I doubt it. I don't know whether they had a compass or not. I don't think that ever came up. There was the one slide I had there was, if anyone's interested in that, there's a book. Actually, he wrote a book called South, and it's available on Gutenberg Project, I think it is, which it's free because the copyright is expired, so you can download it and it's a Kindle. And it's a really interesting book if you want to get in and read it, especially in light of everything that's been said about him as being a leader. And the one thing that impressed me about that is when reading it, you get to the point where the ship's in the ice, he knows he has to do something, he's already plotting, 3 months down the road, they know they're going to do a drift in the ice, and he knows what island he wants to get to 3 months before. And then when the ship sinks, he starts, or looks like it is going to break up and sink, he starts writing about all the alternatives that he's going to have to deal with. Okay, we're going to camp, we're going to have to do this, we're going to have to do this, we need to do this ahead of time. And it's just amazing, you're in this condition, and this guy's already thinking of, if plan A doesn't work, I've got plan B, and if plan B doesn't work, I've got plan C. So if you're interested in it, it's, like I said, it's free download. If you do a search on Shackleton South, there's a number of books out there that are on that. Yes?
Why do they have to eradicate the reindeer?
They're just, they don't belong there. They're eating the grasslands. They're trying to return South Georgia to what it was before the whalers and sealers arrived. Any other questions?
So is it land where this almost floats?
Yes.
Special land?
Yes.
It's not iceberg?
No. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the grass you see it's all tussock. There's no trees. Basically it's this tussock grass, and it's hard to explain. It's kind of a mound of dirt, and then you got this head of grass coming out of it that's very rough and coarse. And hiking there is just nearly impossible. I would imagine so. To some degree. Yeah, it was their spring. I didn't see it.
Is it British territory?
Yes.
Parkland?
No, it's British territory. It's not parkland, but there is a British overseer that actually lives in the Falkland Islands that maintains. And the Antarctic Survey Station is mainly for fishing, control of they do a lot of the control of the fishing boats that come in for the longliners, per se. They have to register. Because the longliners, they send out miles of these lines with hooks for the one type of fish they're going for. And I can't think of the name of it. But the problem is the albatross died. They caught in the hooks and killed it. And that was the main loss of albatross. for years, was these long liners. So they control how that's done. The baited hooks have to drop down within a certain number of feet from the ship, rather than just trailing it out and letting it float for a while. Mm-hmm. Well, it sails that area regularly. It's chartered. This time we actually ran into there was 3 Swedish women had chartered it, and they were going to try to cross-country ski the length of South Georgia. And they had to give up partway across for some reason. So I think we met them in, I'm not sure, Salisbury Plain. We were walking down. Here come these three women in ski boots. Okay, and that's where they had chartered the boat. And they had to give up on the trip, so they still had the boat under charter, so they were just sailing around. Probably the Falklands. The Falklands is the closest territory, which is 800 miles. Yes.
What were the bird life like? What fish were found?
What fish? I'm trying to think what the name of the fish is that they're, well, krill. Yeah, there's a large krill and lanternfish, and that penguins are, and that's all because of the Antarctic influence. The current flows around Antarctica, and it kept upwelling, and it just brings up all the nutrients in the water, which is the attraction of the seabirds and as well as the penguins. But the fish that they longline for are, I can't think of it right now. On the spot. I was going to write it down too. Questions? Anyone else? Oh.
I noticed you cataloging the birds is very meticulous. Bird watchers or ornithologists by background?
No.
No, it was really detailed. So.
Oh, you mean the listing?
All the birds.
Oh, the birds that, yeah, well, I kept track of the ones we took because there was a number of birders on the ship. And so it was, oh, what was that? Oh, okay, I think I got it.
Nothing else.
Nothing else, yeah, when you got 11 days on the sea with nothing else to do, I spent a lot of time on the stern of the ship taking pictures, and the first 5 days, I think I probably deleted well over 1,000 pictures I took. It took me that long to figure out how, in order to photograph these, because the birds would follow the ship, and they would just soar over, because the ship is kicking up all this nutrients from the water. So the birds, it's right up on the surface for them. So you get all the albatross, the petrels, and the prions sailing really close to the ship. I mean, they come right over your head, probably no more than 5 or 6 feet above your head. And it took me a while to figure out. I finally figured out, put it on manual focus, high speed, continuous shooting that you can do. And when you see one, you just push the button and hope for the best.
How about with passengers?
Nah, you're asking the wrong person. Yeah, I didn't find them, when we started out, the first couple days were weighty, I would say. I didn't think they were that bad. A lot of people got sick. And a lot of people that didn't show up for breakfast. So, but I've never gotten seasick. And so, in fact, when it gets rough, I kind of enjoy that, as long as I'm sitting down and don't have to walk too far. But it was in 2005 when we went from South Georgia to the Antarctica Peninsula. We were in a 300-foot icebreaker, which is basically a rounded bottom. And the winds were, we had to actually alter cars, because the course we were supposed to take, it was hurricane course winds. I mean, there were 100-mile-an-hour winds. And we altered course slightly to avoid it. We were still in 15-meter seas. 45-foot, 50-foot waves. And it was still blowing probably 70, 80 miles an hour when we were heading into it. So, and going across the Drake Passage, what? I don't know how to turn it off. Is it? Oh, okay. Oh, all right. Any other questions?
Near the beginning of the program, you showed the ship's chart and your route from South America.
Yes.
Do you know if the numbers indicating the depth of the water were fathoms or feet?
Probably meters. I'm guessing it was meters, because it's a Dutch ship. And I think everything was pretty much in meters or metric on board the ship. Any other